So we're very pleased to have with us Bruno Lemarquis, the Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Mr. Lemarquis, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Farhan. Good afternoon. So I will brief on the humanitarian situation in the DRC, but before doing so, I want to say a few words about what's going on in the DRC, which is a country with incredible potential, as you know. So first, it's an electoral year. Elections are planned to take place at the end of the year. The country is having very interesting macroeconomic performance, one of the highest economic growth rate on the continent. The country is investing $1.5 billion on local development throughout all its territories. A very, very interesting initiative is taking place between the DRC and Zambia to establish a value chain for electric batteries in the DRC, because the DRC is one of the world's first producer of cobalt and lithium. And also the transition of MONUSCO is progressing. So it's important when we talk about the DRC to have a balanced narrative and also to change a bit the narrative beyond the crisis angle to the DRC. When it comes to the humanitarian situation, and here we are talking mostly about Eastern DRC and the provinces of Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu, the situation has very seriously deteriorated. And it's quite unprecedented over the past 14 months with a huge spike of humanitarian needs. There are now 6.3 million internally displaced people in Eastern DRC, including 2.8 million that have been displaced over the past year. So it's the highest number of displaced people in Africa. DRC is also the home of the highest number of food insecure people in the world, with 1 Congolese out of 4 being food insecure, mostly due to conflict, but not only, there are also a lot of chronic vulnerabilities. The trigger for this deterioration of the humanitarian situation is the resurgence of the M23 movement in March 2022, and this had direct consequences and indirect consequences. The main direct consequences has been of the fight between M23 and the Congolese army has been the displacement of 1.2 million people in North Kivu, and most of them are around the city of Goma, and most of them live in spontaneous sites. The living conditions for all those displaced people are suboptimal. The sites are overcrowded. The situation is very difficult. And the humanitarian community, we have been discussing with the Congolese government for a long time for securing additional sites where we could invest temporary shelter, but most of them so far are living in what we call spontaneous sites. We are particularly concerned about the exponential increase of cases of gender-based violence in those sites. Sexual violence and transactional sex in all those sites. Based on our data, there has been an increase of 73% increase of gender-based violence cases in North Kivu between 2021 and 2022. Because of the deterioration of the situation. So strong action is required. It's really appalling. It's horrifying. Strong action is required by everybody, by the national authority in terms of prevention, in terms of ensuring security in those sites, including the fight against impunity. And also strong action by humanitarian actors, by development actors, by human rights actors to tackle this concerning issue. The indirect consequences have been mostly in the province of Ituri, which is north of North Kivu. 39% of the population of Ituri is now displaced. 39% of the population of Ituri is displaced. Ituri is twice as big as Belgium. So, and 25% of the population in North Kivu is displaced. The reason why I call it indirect consequences is because of the resurgence of the M23. The Congolese government has moved troops, many troops, to North Kivu, creating therefore a security vacuum in Ituri. and some armed groups have taken advantage of that. Over the past 3 months, there has been, for example, 600 civilians killed by those armed groups, and especially groups that are called Codeco and Zaire, who are engaged into a deadly confrontation. Another group is called the ADF, the Allied Democratic Forces, which continue to commit atrocities. Recently, Codeco made an attack on a site of displaced people, killing more than, in a Lala site, that's the name of the site is Lala, and killing more than 40 people. So we always ask all parties to respect international humanitarian law. Civilians should never be a target. Civilian infrastructure should never be a target. Humanitarian workers should never be a target. The DRC is the most dangerous place on earth for humanitarian workers. There are also other hotspots in the country. I don't think we have too much time for that. Beyond the east, especially in eastern province next to Kinshasa, called Mai-Dombe, where there is a crisis that has started a year ago and that is continuing unabated, and it's now the effect of it are being felt in Kinshasa. In addition to conflict, there are also the effect of natural hazard and disasters exacerbated by climate change. And recently there was a massive disaster with floods and landslide killing about 500 people, 1,000 are missing, and 1,000 of families are remaining homeless. So in light of all of that deteriorating humanitarian situation, the humanitarian system, the humanitarian actors are overstretched. We often need to make hard choices to prioritize, which is always difficult. This is why the Emergency Relief Coordinator declared a few days ago what we call a system-wide scale-up. That means putting the humanitarian system on high alert to trigger a much more robust response from the humanitarian system, but also to send an alarm on the situation. Immediately after that, 7 UN agencies have already declared their own internal activation, and this will bring additional capacity, internal resources for a more robust response. The focus of that effort will be on food, the food situation and food shortages with all the displaced population, on protection, especially gender-based violence, and on the spread of disease and epidemics. We are also hoping that this will have an impact on the funding situation. Because of the immensity of the needs, our humanitarian appeal our ask is very high. It's $2.25 billion. Right now we are 30% funded only, so we need very strong support from everybody, from the international community, and we thank our donors, but we need always more. And then maybe to close, to say humanitarian assistance is absolutely critical in the DRC, because for millions of people, especially the displaced population, but humanitarian assistance is never the solution to humanitarian problems. So it's all about political solution. And so there are ongoing political processes which the UN is fully supporting, especially the Nairobi political process and the Luanda political process. So this needs full support from the international community and from the region, of course. All efforts aiming at the redeployment of state authority in those provinces, at stabilization, at demobilization, disarmament, reintegration in the community of combatants from armed group, security sector reform, durable solution for the displaced. All this is absolutely important and needs to be supported. In the DRC, most of the conflict have deep roots, which I call the Gordian knot of conflict. Deep roots, and it's mostly about land issue. It's about the what we call the extractive, the exploitation of natural resources, especially minerals. It's about the governance of the mining sector. It's about illicit financial flows. These are the roots of most conflict in the DRC. So unless those roots are tackled, and they are extremely complicated roots and they go way beyond the borders of the DRC, those conflicts will continue. And then final words, it's also about advancing, offering other prospects for the youth in the DRC, advancing development, advancing economic development. The DRC has so much potential, economic potential. It's about advancing the SDGs so that young men and women have a better future in the DRC. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll now turn the floor over to questions. Yes, Evelyn.
Well, welcome
Thank you.
to the briefing on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association. Excuse me. I'm Evelyn Leopold from Globetrotter Media and Pass Blue. And a couple questions. Which neighboring countries, if any, are actively participating in groups like M23 or the other armed groups that are in Ituri and all through the country? And secondly, on cobalt and lithium, very valuable minerals, where are they, who's exploiting them, where are they being sold, who's getting the money from them? Thank you very much.
So on the first part of the question, I think there is a lot of reading available on this, including from the group of experts, and it's not up to us to comment, but it's often up to the Security Council to consider those reports and take action. There are a number of foreign armed groups active in Eastern DRC from neighboring countries. And part of the Nairobi political process, for example, is about having a Congolese armed group willing to demobilize, to disarm, and to join a program which we call PDDRCS. It's the Congolese program for demobilization, disarmament, community reintegration. But it's also calling for foreign armed group to go back home through a process to go back home. So this takes interstate collaboration in this, and the Office of the Special Envoy of the UN for the Great Lakes is also active in helping those collaboration for the return of those foreign armed group. On trade in the DRC, again, there is a lot of information available. You have licit and you have illicit exploitation of natural resources. So, for example, this initiative I mentioned at the beginning with Zambia, this could be a model not only for the DRC and one of its neighbors, but the DRC has 9 neighbors. So a lot of good lessons could be learned from that initiative as it progresses, but it's also a good model for Africa because it would mean bringing some of the value chain, the transformation, on the continent rather than solely exporting raw material. A lot of raw material are exported, a lot of minerals are exported raw from the DRC all over the world. It's a major producer of many of those minerals. It's #1 reserve for some of those minerals, and many of the electric batteries, for example, functioning in the world have Congolese or your iPhone. Many of the iPhone have coltan, cobalt, and so on. Yeah.
Thank you. Stefano.
Thank you, Stefano Maccara, Voce New York. Do you have any information about, I mean, it was months ago, but there were rumors that also in DRC, there was a beginning of a presence of the Wagner group, some airport, Goma, and so on. And do you know anything about it? Are there mercenaries, Russian mercenaries at the moment?
I have no information about that. The Congolese government has brought in a number of private security companies, but I'm not aware of that specific one you have mentioned.
So you aware that there are actually mercenaries, it's just that you can't confirm where those are from.
There are private security companies, that's how we call them,
Yeah,
that have been contracted by the Congolese government to augment and most of them are focusing on training, on maintenance of assets. So they are present in country, private security companies, but I'm not aware of the specific one you've mentioned.
And I believe Mr. Lemarquis has another appointment, so we'll end this here. And I'd like once again to thank Bruno Lemarquis, the Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I'd like to also wish you all a good afternoon. Have a great weekend, everyone.